classically, when you go back and you look at the Rockefellers, when you look at some of, you look at the old AT&T, the arguments for breaking companies like that up were typically that consumers were paying a higher price. And one of the unique features of this moment is that all four of these companies have historically lowered prices, or at least it has appeared as if consumers are paying less. I know there's an argument to be made about whether that price could even be lower than it is today, if not for the size. But the question is whether the antitrust rules unto themselves as written today, based on the Sherman Act, need to be reframed, rewritten, adjusted to reflect today's reality, if you believe that today's reality poses a problem for our economy long term.
Well, neither one of us are attorneys, but we can both try to play them. There's also the Clayton Antitrust Act, and Section 2 of Clayton might be more relevant than Sherman on straight industrial concentration, but issues that have to do with anti-competitive issues on innovation or access, or there are other ways of starting new businesses. But you're right that the cost to the consumer, especially, let's say, in the Amazon case, it's hard to benchmark the others. But it's come, of course, at a cost. That since that Joe mentioned Jeff Bezos' last appearance on Squawk Box 20 years ago, almost 50% of retailers have disappeared. Now, it's not completely Amazon's fault, of course, and maybe some of that needed to happen. There's been a lot more efficiency brought in, but it has come at a cost. And this is, I think, a lot of what people will be wrestling with. We're going to see a lot of stagecraft, a lot of theatrics. Of course, we have different issues with each company. The antitrust issues are less pronounced for Apple, but Apple does have their issues. There's something to do, of course, that's a challenge that Spotify would challenge you, Andrew, and say that they've had some difficulties, and others with the App Store. There are people who have questions with antitrust implications that have to do with PayPal and access and getting on devices. And again, Apple.
But Jeff, the question I'd ask is whether you think that there is competition, and whether 20 years from now, these companies will still be the biggest companies in the world. You go back, by the way, 20 years ago, the biggest companies were Microsoft, which is still in the list, but after that, none are. GE, Cisco, Exxon, Walmart, Intel, NTT, Nokia. Remember Nokia? Lucent Technologies, BP. They're all not in the top 10 anymore. They've all been erased with the exception of Microsoft. So the question is, 20 years from now, whether these companies are so big today that they'll still be so big 20 years from now, or whether, you talk about a Facebook, you say to yourself, who knew about TikTok 2 years ago? I don't know. If we had said TikTok to you 2 years ago, you would have said, what time is it? So no, I think these are sort of the competitive questions.
Facebook and Zuckerberg will be draping themselves in a patriotic pitch about global competition having to do with TikTok and raising the China threat especially. And you're right that Google will similarly, well, in fact, I think Apple especially will be taking a look at the Huawei, as well as LG and Samsung. There are pernicious global threats out there, but the great economist Joseph Schumpeter, even though he was a Harvard guy, still would the issue having to do with creative destruction. Yes, new things always come along, but some of the ideas of the new things came along is the threats weren't the companies that you raised. Nobody was about Nokia having a stranglehold. Motorola and others were out there giving them a good run for their money. But when IBM trust, it was 15 years of a long process that went nowhere. And they dropped the case. AT&T, 10 years.
Jeff, it's always good to see you. I need to apologize because we got to hit a hard break, and there's so much coming up today. I want to thank you for your perspective.